Sumer, the first cities that invented civilization. Around 3500 to 3000 BCE, in the marshes between the Tigris and Euphrates, small farming villages turned into the world's first cities, places like Uruk, Ur, and Lagash. Imagine mud brick streets, reed boats on the river, and towering ziggurats at the center of town. Why it happened? Irrigation let farmers grow surplus grain. Surplus created trade, which required record-keeping, and record-keeping invented writing. That writing, cuneiform, began as accounting marks on clay tablets. Main changes? City councils and temples collected taxes, hired workers, and ran large building projects. Kings, priests, and scribes created bureaucracy, written laws, standardized weights, and professional armies. Sumerians made the wheel, the plow, the first legal codes, and a base 60 number system that still shapes how we tell time today. So when you check your clock or read a legal rule, you're touching a Sumerian idea. That's why historians call Sumer the blueprint of civilization. Ancient Egypt. Pharaohs, pyramids, and state religion explained. Around 3100 to 30 BCE, the Nile shaped everything. Each year, the river flooded predictably, feeding crops and creating surplus. That surplus let people settle in larger towns, specialize in jobs, and pay taxes. Out of that came a strong central state ruled by the pharaoh, part king, part priest. Pharaohs claimed they were divine, which made obedience feel like religion. Temples and royal courts collected grain, organized labor, and kept records. Scribes, the literate few, ran the day-to-day, taxes, laws, and supply lists. Why the pyramids? They were public projects that showed power. Around 2600 BCE, the Great Pyramid of Khufu rose at Giza, built from roughly 2.3 million stone blocks and originally about 146 meters tall. Tens of thousands of workers moved those stones. That scale proved the state could command resources and people on a huge scale. Egypt also gave us writing in hieroglyphs, advanced medicine, monumental art, and a 365-day calendar used to track the Nile and harvests. Its bureaucracy kept the country stable for millennia. Pharaohs, viziers, nomes, and a system of temples and granaries. Long-term impact, Egypt turned religion into administration and mud brick villages into a lasting state. The tools, writing, law, taxes, and massive public work became the template later empires copied. So next time you see a pyramid, remember, it's not just a tomb, it's state power carved in stone. Achaemenid Persia, empire of roads, tolerance, and administration, explained. Think of an empire the size of 3 modern European countries put together. That was Achaemenid Persia under Cyrus and Darius. In 539 BCE, Cyrus toppled Babylon and then did something unusual. He let many conquered peoples keep their local customs and religions. That policy of practical tolerance kept restive regions calmer and made rule cheaper. Why it worked? Persia didn't try to micromanage every village. Darius, ruling from 522 to 486 BCE, divided the realm into roughly 20 satrapies, provinces run by satraps, and paid them with regular taxes and quotas. He standardized systems, a common coin, the daric, standardized weights, and Aramaic as a lingua franca for administration. That made trade and bookkeeping fast and reliable. The glue was infrastructure. The Royal Road, roughly 1,700 miles from Susa to Sardis, linked palace to province. Relay stations and mounted couriers cut message times from months to days. Imagine horse relays thundering across deserts, carrying orders and tax reports. That network also moved goods and ideas, knitting economies from Egypt to India. Main events and outcomes: centralized taxes funded standing armies, canal and road projects, and rapid responses to rebellions. The empire's scale let it protect long-distance trade and financed cultural exchange. Mathematics, art, and technologies flowed along those routes. Long-term impact: Persia invented a repeatable model: provincial rule, state infrastructure, standardized money, and tolerant policy that later empires from Rome to the Islamic caliphates copied. Bottom line, Persia held a continent not just by force, but by systems that made governance routine, and that changed how empires worked forever.
Maurya Empire, India's first continental state, explained. Around 321 BCE, a young leader named Chandragupta Maurya stitched together dozens of rival kingdoms and created the first truly continental state in India, the Maurya Empire. Think of one central court able to move grain, soldiers, and laws across a huge land. Why it worked? The Mauryas built a tight professional bureaucracy. Guided by advisors like Kautilya, the author of the Arthashastra, the state collected regular taxes, ran state-owned workshops, and kept a standing army. They used roads, standardized weights, and a network of officials to make rule efficient. Then came Ashoka. His reign, ca. 268 to 232 BCE, is the turning point. After the brutal Kalinga War, which left tens of thousands dead, Ashoka converted to Buddhism and shifted policy. His rock and pillar edicts, carved across the empire, ordered hospitals, wells, shade trees, and fair treatment for prisoners and animals. He even promoted moral teaching and sent Buddhist missionaries beyond his borders. What that meant? The Maurya state combined hard power, armies, spies, taxation, with soft power, public welfare, moral law, and sponsored religion. That mix kept peace, boosted trade, and integrated diverse peoples under one administration. Long-term impact? The Maurya model, a large centralized bureaucracy, public works, and the idea that a ruler must care for subjects, shaped later Indian states and spread Buddhism across Asia. When you see organized cities, public service, or Buddhism far from India, you're seeing Maurya echoes. So, they didn't just conquer, they built a lasting system of government that changed how whole societies were run.
Macedonian Hellenistic Empire. Alexander's fusion of worlds explained. Imagine a man in his early 20s riding into battle and changing the map of the old world. Alexander the Great, reigning 336 to 323 BCE, smashed the Persian army at Gaugamela in 331 BCE, and then pushed his rule from Greece across Asia Minor, Egypt, and into northwest India. Why it mattered? Alexander didn't only conquer, he built cities, mixed peoples, and spread a shared culture. He founded dozens of cities, many called Alexandria, that became marketplaces, garrisons, and melting pots where Greeks, Persians, Egyptians, and Asians lived and traded. What changed? Greek became a common tongue, koine, making law, trade, and ideas move faster. Science and learning clustered in new hubs. Think Alexandria's great library and scholars like Euclid and Eratosthenes, who measured the earth within a few % of its true size. Art and religion blended too. You get Greek gods painted with Eastern styles and later Greco-Buddhist statues in Gandhara. Outcomes? Alexander's empire broke apart quickly after his death in 323 BCE, but his generals created the Hellenistic kingdoms, Ptolemaic Egypt, Seleucid Asia, Antigonid Macedonia, that ruled for centuries. Their cities ran long-distance trade from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean, spreading crops, coins, and ideas. Long-term impact? Hellenization created a shared cultural and scientific toolkit that carried Greek thought into the Roman world and across Asia. In short, Alexander didn't just redraw borders, he networked continents, and that network shaped art, science, language, and trade for the next 800 years.
Roman Empire. Law, roads, and the blueprint of empire. Explained. Think of a small hill town that turned into a continent-spanning power. Rome began as a city by the Tiber, grew into a republic where citizens elected magistrates, and then into an empire under leaders like Augustus. Why it worked? Rome built systems that made power routine, clear law, fast movement, and organized manpower. Roman law started with the 12 tables and evolved into a legal tradition that treated property, contracts, and citizenship as predictable rules. That stability let markets and cities grow. Logistics kept the empire together. Rome's armies were organized into legions of roughly 5,000 men, supported by roads, bridges, and forts. Those stone roads, tens of thousands of miles, had mile markers and relay points, so messages, troops, and trade moved fast across Europe, North Africa, and the Near East. Aqueducts carried fresh water. Public baths and sewers shaped urban life, and Roman concrete let builders span huge spaces. The Pantheon's dome alone is about 142 feet across and still stands. Main events and outcomes? Conquest created a circulation of goods, people, and ideas. The Pax Romana, roughly 2 centuries of relative peace, boosted trade and urban prosperity, while Roman governors and law enforced order in diverse provinces. Long-term impact? Law, roads, Latin, city planning, and building techniques didn't vanish with Rome. Modern legal systems, many European languages, the calendar fix from Julius Caesar, and even how we build roads and cities echo Roman choices. So whenever a courthouse cites law, a road cut straight as an arrow, or you walk into a domed hall, you're walking on Rome's blueprint, the empire that taught the world how to organize huge societies.
Han China, bureaucracy, Confucian statecraft, and the Silk Road. Explained. Imagine a state that lasted from 206 BCE to 220 CE and left the rules for running an empire. That was Han China. I want you to picture palace scholars reading bamboo slips, officials writing dusty roads, and silk bolts packed for long, dangerous trade routes. Why it worked? The Han fused Confucian ideas with a professional administration. The court set up state schools and a recommendation system to fill offices with trained men, a precursor to later civil service exams. Administrators kept censuses, tax registers, and granaries, so the state could move grain, raise armies, and collect steady revenue. Big moments? Emperor Wu sent envoys like Zhang Chen into Central Asia in the 2nd century BCE. Those missions opened trade links, what we now call the Silk Road, carrying silk, horses, glass, and ideas from China to the Mediterranean and back. Inside China, the Han accrued iron tools, standardized coinage, and late in the dynasty, an innovation changed everything. Paper, formalized under Kai Lun CE 105, replaced heavy bamboo slips and made record-keeping, books, and bureaucracy far easier. Outcomes and impact? The Han created a durable model, merit-based administration, state schools, and international trade routes that shaped later Chinese dynasties and influenced governance across East Asia. When you think of the civil service, paper archives, or China as a trading hub, you're seeing the Han legacy.
Early Islamic caliphates, Umayyad, Abbasid, trade, learning, and a connected world. Explained. After Rome fell, trade and learning splintered until a new force rose from the Arabian deserts. The early Islamic caliphates, first to Umayyad, 661 to 750, and then the Abbasids, 750 to 1258, built an empire that stretched from Spain to India, connecting 3 continents through faith, language, and commerce. Picture Damascus with marble mosques and bustling markets, then Baghdad, a circular city glittering with scholars, translators, and merchants. Under the Abbasids, Baghdad's House of Wisdom became the world's first true research hub. Greek, Persian, and Indian works on math, medicine, and philosophy were translated into Arabic, preserving and expanding ancient knowledge. Algebra, optics, and the concept of zero traveled west through these networks, reshaping science forever. The caliphates didn't just spread religion, they spread systems. Arabic became the shared language of trade and learning. Gold dinars standardized commerce from Cairo to Cordoba. Caravan routes and maritime trade linked the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean, carrying spices, paper, and ideas. The impact? They made the medieval world connected. The Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates fused cultures, preserved knowledge, and built cities whose intellectual reach prefigured our digital age. When you think of global networks,
You're echoing what Baghdad once was, the brain of a connected world.
The Mongol Empire, nomads who shaped Eurasia, explained. In the 13th century, a wave of horsemen from the steppes reshaped the world. Under Genghis Khan, the Mongols united nomadic tribes and unleashed the fastest, most mobile army in history, one that could strike 1,000 miles away and vanish just as quickly. Their conquests were brutal, cities burned, kingdoms collapsed, yet out of that devastation emerged the most connected Eurasia had ever been. The Mongol Empire, stretching from China to Hungary, created a Pax Mongolica, a century of relative peace that protected merchants, diplomats, and scholars along the Silk Road. For the first time, a traveler could cross from the Pacific to the Mediterranean under one imperial seal. The Mongols established relay stations, passports, and standardized trade routes. Spices, paper, gunpowder, and even the Black Plague traveled these same paths, transforming economies and empires alike. But it wasn't just trade. It was exchange. Engineers, doctors, and astronomers moved freely across cultures. The Mongols borrowed Chinese siegecraft, Persian administration, and Islamic science, fusing them into a model of pragmatic empire. Their reign was short, but its shockwaves long. The Mongols didn't just conquer, they connected. They turned a fragmented continent into one vast, if temporary, web, setting the stage for the modern global world.
Ottoman Empire, the last great gunpowder state, explained. From a small Anatolian frontier principality in the 1300s, the Ottoman Empire rose to dominate 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, for over 600 years. Their secret wasn't just conquest, but adaptability. The ability to modernize armies, govern diverse peoples, and balance faith with pragmatism. Armed with early gunpowder weapons, the Ottomans stormed Constantinople in 1453 under Mehmet the Conqueror, transforming it into Istanbul, the new capital of a gunpowder empire. Their military might was matched by a sophisticated administrative system. At the empire's core was the millet system, a framework that allowed Christians, Jews, and Muslims to live under their own religious laws while paying taxes to the Sultan. This pluralism kept peace across vast cultural divides, making the Ottomans both feared conquerors and skilled governors. Trade flourished across their crossroads. Silk from Persia, coffee from Yemen, and ideas from Europe met in Ottoman ports. Istanbul became the hub between East and West, connecting continents through diplomacy and commerce. By the 17th century, the empire faced decline, yet its blueprint, centralized rule, religious tolerance, and gunpowder-driven reform influenced every empire that followed. The Ottomans were not just conquerors of territory, they were masters of coexistence, the last great gunpowder state that bridged civilizations.
British Empire, industrial power, global networks, and modern capitalism, explained. From a small island on Europe's edge, the British Empire built the first truly global network, one that redefined how the modern world works. Its rise wasn't just about conquest, it was about industry, innovation, and sea power. Fueled by the Industrial Revolution, Britain mastered coal, steam, and steel, turning factories into the engines of empire. With the world's most powerful navy, it secured trade routes from India to the Caribbean, exporting goods, laws, and the English language along with its ships. Colonies became both markets and resources. Cotton from India fed Manchester's mills. Tea, sugar, and railways tied continents into one system. The British didn't just rule an empire, they invented the framework of the modern global economy, one powered by industry and bound by trade.
United States, the modern superpower that reordered the world, explained. Unlike empires built by conquest, the United States shaped the modern world through influence, economic, cultural, and technological. After World War II, it emerged as the dominant global power, not by annexing territory, but by building systems that made others depend on its leadership. Its dollar became the backbone of global trade. Its corporations, from Coca-Cola to Apple, turned consumption into culture.
Hollywood, rock music, and the internet projected American ideals across borders, crafting what historians call a soft empire. Meanwhile, military alliances like NATO and a network of overseas bases gave Washington unmatched reach. Through the Marshall Plan, it rebuilt Europe's economies. Through institutions like the UN, IMF, and World Bank, it set the rules of globalization. Yet this power wasn't purely benevolent. The same reach that spread prosperity also sparked debate over intervention, inequality, and the balance between freedom and dominance. By the 21st century, the U.S. had created a world that runs on its systems: finance, technology, entertainment, and defense. It may not fly imperial banners, but its influence defines modern civilization. America didn't just win wars, it rewired the planet.